Hello and welcome to Kelly and Wrighty. New year, new... Talk about VAR, that's what you said at the start of the season,
it's busted
wasn't it?
already.
How's that going?
It's gone, Kels. It's gone. I'm talking about it already.
In the next hour, we will be looking back at a blockbuster game at Anfield. Man United proved their doubters wrong. They earned a point in a 2-2 draw with Liverpool.
Tottenham were beaten at home by Newcastle, and Ange Postecoglou not happy with a couple of decisions in that game.
And we'll take a look at how things are shaping up at the bottom. Ipswich and Everton with contrasting fortunes this weekend. But before we get stuck in, let's have a quick look back at yesterday's action on Merseyside. Well, despite dropping those points at home yesterday, Liverpool still 6 points clear with a game in hand. Arsenal, Forest and Chelsea make up the rest of the top four. Forest play this evening. Newcastle into 5th after their win at Spurs, and Manchester City are only a point behind them. They're in 6th now. Villa climb above Fulham after their win against Leicester. Manchester United, even with the point, remain in the bottom half. It was a much improved performance yesterday against Liverpool. Spurs only a point ahead of them in 12th. Ipswich in the bottom 3 after their draw with Fulham, but they are only a point behind Everton, who are in 16th. Wolves in between them in 17th. They host Forest this evening. And with us today to look back on a busy weekend of action, Jermain Defoe is here, Darren Lewis is here, and it was a real proper old-fashioned Liverpool-Man United game yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, all we really needed was a kind of sending off, and it would have been almost perfect. It would have been a classic. But look, it was a very different performance from Manchester United, and it was a real off day for Liverpool, all of which added up to a great game.
Yes, and going into the game, I'm sure that Man United fans, with the way it's been going for United, would have been a little bit worried about the outcome of that game. But I thought that they've got to get a lot of credit for Man United, especially that midfield, which finally looks like it could work with Kobe Mainoo, Ugarte, and the way that Fernandes played. And then they went longer. They went longer. They changed it up a little bit, went longer. They were able to compete. And Liverpool at the moment, for whatever reason, and I think we saw it yesterday with maybe the form of like Trent, how Trent played and how they were able to get in there. And the form of Andy Robertson's a little bit worrying as well. They were able to breach them. They were able to get through Liverpool. I thought that Kobe Mainoo on Curtis Jones was like a mismatch in that game, you know, as much as I really love Curtis Jones. But I just thought that those Man United players, they really turned up for that game. Yeah,
and that might be a sort of mixed blessing for Manchester United fans, because they'll look at that performance and think, where's that been? Where's that come from?
I think that's the level. I think that's the level. I think there's no excuse now as players. I think when you go to Anfield, and in my opinion, it's probably the toughest places to go. But for me, that's the level. I think when you play like that, but they started the game really fast. I knew straight away, and it's a one-off game. You know, it's the game. You look at the fixture. If you're a Man United player, you know you want to play against Liverpool. If you're a Liverpool player, well, okay, when do we play Man United? But I think the middle of the pitch is key. You know, if you play, no disrespect, if you play Eriksen and Casemiro, you know, it's difficult for them to get around because the legs and that. But you know, Ugarte and Mainoo yesterday, I just felt like there was more structure. They started fast and they looked a lot more confident. They looked like a team that believed that, you know what, we can get something out of this game. It was a completely different performance.
Yeah, and it was interesting even in terms of the individuals, because, as you said, it's a difficult place to go and play football. It's Liverpool against Manchester United, which wherever it's played is always intense. And yet, for the past few seasons, Darren, those pretty much same group of Manchester United players have not found that in them.
Absolutely. No win in 9 before yesterday. And I'm going to be a little bit of a Grinch on this one because, as you say, I think they turned up. They turned up, you're absolutely right. But where were these players against Bournemouth, against Forest, against Newcastle, where they conceded 2 in the first half, could have conceded 5? Where have they been over the course of the defeats that have really put the spotlight on Amorim? If you look at the last 12 games, the only previous time they really did turn up at City, another big game against big opposition. They've become teams who don't want to do the hard work, the bread and butter. They want to play against the big players and in the big occasions where the spotlight is on. So I don't want to get too excited about them just yet. I want to see how they do against Southampton. Now, they should beat Southampton, but after that, they've got Brighton. If this team turns up and does what they did against Liverpool, against Brighton, then I'll start to get excited.
But you know what was really
them.
interesting, Darren, to hear when you listen to Amorim speak? He's such a great communicator. I think it's a blessing United have got him, especially with the way that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's acting at Ineos, you know, all the cutbacks. And he is the communicator which is keeping this place together. And he said, he's the one that has said, everything here. It's too comfortable. When you hear him say it's too comfortable, you know what I mean? It's the minds, their minds. You remember you was talking about...
Lisandro Martinez said it in the interview afterwards. He was asked, what's the difference? And he pointed to his head and said it's all in the mind.
And that is what I believe that this manager will, if given time, which I'm sure he'll get, because we've seen what they're capable of doing. They've got to the mountaintop in respect of this performance. And like this Man United, this is where they have to be. And I think that with this manager, they'll probably get there.
Well, when you think about when he was at Sporting, after his first season, there were just 3 players left. Of all the players that he had to work with in that first campaign, so many of them were shipped out in the summer. I look at the summer, you mentioned, for example, Eriksen and Casemiro, they won't be there next season. They're among many players who just don't have the legs to play in this system. But we saw that the system can work if the players are prepared to turn up. So let's see if they turn up after yesterday.
I think you're probably best placed to talk about the Manchester United players and their mentality this season, because you were at Rangers at a time when the club had been rebuilding and you were challenging Celtic. There were games in the Scottish Premiership which you would have been expected to win, but you still had to turn up for them, and then you win the title there. You get back to where Rangers fans would have wanted you to be. Do you understand that kind of that switch in mentality that we saw from the Manchester United players?
Yeah, I mean, there's an expectation, you know, from... I suppose it's sort of like you have to put that pressure on your teammates. You have to drive those standards as players. You know, I think a lot of teams now, they've got like... a lot of managers talk about leadership groups. Manager can't do everything. As players, especially the senior players that are there and they've been there and they understand, I think you've got to drive those sort of messages. But like you said, when we was at Rangers, I remember Steve, we had a meeting, you know, pre-season, and Steve says to us, listen, I've spoke to the board, this is what they want, so now I'm putting that on you as players. If you can't do it, then I'll get someone else into that. So he put the pressure on the players. And I think it's good pressure, because then you know what you have to bring it every game.
And training.
And train it, because obviously, you know, the training... And the managers made big decisions. You talk about Rashford and Garnacho and that, you know, left at the squad, and he spoke about, you know, the application in training. You know, your training links to the game. You know, you don't just train for the sake of training. Everything you do in training links to the game on a weekend or on a Saturday. So he's made a big decision, but he's a great communicator, like Wright said.
Yeah, and it does seem to be getting more out of the players, and that's what Martinez was talking about, this idea that they were right mentally for the game against Liverpool. But also, you know, as much as he's a great communicator, Amorim, he also has persisted with this setup, with this structure, like you said, that we talked a lot about before he came in. He was sick of talking about even by the time they played Ipswich in their first game. But was that an indication yesterday of how well that can work, even with a group of players that maybe aren't perfect for that system?
Yes, and this is why, if you're a Man United fan, you must be quite pleased thinking, you know what, I think we have got the right guy. We've definitely got the right guy. We want everybody, the execs upstairs, to now really back him and give him as he wanted. They said, we want you here now, even though he said he wanted to come at the end of the season. And so he's here now, so they should give him the pieces what he wants, because I think that for him sticking to what he believes and getting in a midfield with legs in that Man United side, right? Obviously, there's still, you know, the scoring, and with Højlund and with Xerxes, they've still got to sort out finishing. But from what he's trying to do, and again, like Kels, they did go long a lot yesterday, something like 80% I was reading. So he's willing to change it up for them to then go and win the ball in those areas and be first there and close down and high pressure and win the ball in areas where you could go and hurt them. I think that he's shown that he's capable of making a team do that. But then once he gets the players he wants, we'll maybe probably see
I think
real
that's
Man
the key
United.
thing, because, look, as has been said over the past few weeks, he doesn't want to change that style. Now, OK, yesterday it worked against Liverpool. But the reason Liverpool didn't want Amorim, when they looked at who they could get, and obviously Xabi Alonso decided to stay at Bayer Leverkusen, then it was between Amorim and Slot, and they looked at Amorim. Amorim wanted to play the 3-4-3, and Liverpool said, we haven't got the players for that, and we want to continue with what we've done so far. We want to stick with that 4 at the back, so they went for Slot, and that's worked out superbly well.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Martinez, who spoke so well yesterday, is there's an irony in that his finish was superb, but he's not paid to finish, he's paid to defend, and they've conceded 2 goals in each of the last, or more, in each of the last 4 games. I mean, I think it's something like 19 goals in the last 5 games or something. I think that defence is going to have to be reshaped.
Without that.
That midfield, that there are signs of something being there, and with the willingness to go longer rather than pass out and play around at the back, there is a suggestion that he can be more pragmatic. But I still think other teams, even teams in the bottom half of the Premier League, are going to look at the fragile confidence of this side and say, Liverpool froze, off day for them, but we can still get at them. Let's see if they're ready to do that against the bread and butter teams.
That's what's going to be really interesting, because between the Manchester City game that they won at the Etihad and that game that they drew yesterday at Anfield, it was a run of defeats for Manchester United against, as Darren said, teams that actually you would have given them a better chance of getting a result against.
Yeah, but then it comes down to the mindset of the players. And the
so what is that? What is that?
That is having a mentality, an elite mentality at the start of the season, where you know, and how Man United used to be, and how all the teams that win, like our Manchester City were, all the great teams that win the Premier League have to be. You know that you have to start the season as if it's the end of the season. You have to start the season winning, and winning anyhow you can, getting the momentum and getting in front. That's a mentality that we're now seeing, unfortunately, at Manchester City, for them, is broken. Maybe they cannot sustain the mentality to do what they're doing in dominating teams.
Because I remember I read Tony Adams' book, and he was talking about when George Graham was in charge at Arsenal, we'd come and dressing room and give all of you guys specific instructions what he wanted to see, even down to you, saying, like, I want this amount of runs from you. You and I have covered your Spurs team many times where Harry came in and he had a culture of hard work, and then and all the managers you had at Spurs had that. I kind of see Amorim with that culture of hard work, but I don't see the players being good enough to be able to.
You know what's interesting about that, Dan, when you say that, because George Graham would instill that in you, what he needs from you. As soon as the game's kicked off, I've got to make 3 or 4 runs down the channels. That everybody's got to do what they've got to do. And I remember Tony Adams, before we'd go out, he said, "You all know your jobs. Do your jobs to the best of your ability of doing your job." So if you do, your mentality, Kelsey, is already in, I know exactly what I've got to do, and you go out and do it, and you put that team under that pressure, then you break them, then you score, then you win, and then you relax. That is how you have to start a season, and that's how you have to try and continue through the season when the journey gets tough.
That's quite interesting as well, because you think, who's that leader on the pitch? Who's the Tony Adams? Who's the John Terry who was at Chelsea? Who would have been in that Spurs team? Who would have been the leader on the pitch?
We had Ledley. I mean, Yunus Kabul was an unbelievable communicator. So we had players. Obviously, myself, I became a senior. Yeah, you drive those standards, and that you weren't afraid to sort of like have arguments because you've got that sort of relationship. I think now you look at a lot of teams, and it's too like the manager says we have to do this or we have to do this. Sometimes you might have to adjust it. You know, you might have to adjust it. And I think sometimes with a lot of teams, you look at Bruno Fernandes and that, you look at him, you think, okay, then are you the one that's sort of like, are you driving those sort of messages? Even though I thought he played well yesterday.
Wasn't done in that fixture in previous seasons that we're talking about. Yeah, it isn't always consistently at his best in the big fixtures.
But this is where they have to. This is where that game yesterday, as they've put down a marker to say, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
Now, Kels, we're going to find out, because Roy Keane's constantly talking about it. We'll find out what these players are about, because they've got a few managers out of that place. Yeah. And so what's got to happen now is that those players have to respond to the fact that they can get to those levels. And if they fall down again, we'll know, and he will know, Amorim, these ain't the players. These ain't going to do it because they haven't got the mentality to do it.
I'm not convinced. I look at that squad and I think it needs wholesale changes. I'm not convinced about Fernandes as a captain. I think he throws his arms in the air too much. He gets yellow cards needlessly for dissent. He's led by his emotions. Yeah. And I think when you look at some of the other names we've just mentioned a second ago, you look at their ability to inspire, to communicate, to drive improvement on the pitch and send out the right messages. They're worlds away from Fernandes, who's a good player, but he's not a leader.
I just don't think they've got enough with the ball. When you go to Anfield, listen, it's not easy, but if you get into sort of like a defensive structure, where you think, okay, then it's, people talk about 3-4-3, but it's 3-4 and they've got, 2 number 10s and a centre forward. Yeah. But then without the ball, if we can just get into a good shape, make sure the distances are right and just make it difficult to break down. But then when you play against the lesser teams, when you have to dominate the ball, you need more than that. You need a lot more.
You need a lot more.
I think that idea of playing with emotion is a really interesting one, because traditionally it's been the sense of take emotion out of the game. But actually, if you can regulate your emotions, if you can channel and manage your emotions, they can be a real asset to you as a player. It's not about killing them. It's not about going into a game dead inside.
No.
It's about using them productively.
But this is where a leader who probably is emotional as well deep down in what he's doing, but he's able to channel it in a way where he can inspire people. But you know, with Bruno, who I still think has been magnificent since he signed for Manchester United, regardless of the petulance, which I was guilty of myself as well, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But the fact is, we're talking about someone like Bruno who is emotionally led, which you said, which is right. Where Tony Adams and that are more business led, like, you know, they're more like...
Lead by example.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
see, you said, no, it's a really interesting point, because I think it is emotional, but in a very different way. I remember John Terry, when Chelsea had the chance, when Spurs had the chance to win the league at Chelsea, and John Terry said, it's not happening on my watch. No chance. Yeah. And he sets the tone. He's the manager on the pitch. We talk about Roy. Roy was a fantastic central midfielder. He was driven by emotion and spite, but he was also business-like. He channeled it in the right way. You did not see Roy getting needless yellow cards at half-time, walking off with referees because you're complaining about decisions. He came out second half and wanted to put things right. I remember the Champions League semi-final, I think it was. Juventus, and he got the yellow card, it put him out of the final.
And then it was unbelievable after.
Unbelievable after that, because he was able to challenge that emotion in the right way.
Some players, I mean, I played with Ledley King, so quiet, but he led by example. David Beckham for England, you know, he led by example. You know, as young players, you know, David Beckham was one of those players that he would scream and shout in the change rooms, really calm and composed. But then on the pitch, or even in training, you'd watch him, he'd do extras after training. So a lot of things are caught, not only taught. So young players will see that and be like, okay, then maybe that's what we need to be like. It's unbelievable.
I mean, you could watch that game and think, while Arne Slot said Liverpool were prepared for how Manchester United would be set up, one way or another, they might not have been prepared for the intensity that Manchester United played at. And just to come back to that point of emotion, we've been waiting for the three players who are out of contracts. We've been waiting all season to be able to go, oh, look, it's taking a toll on them. Did it take a toll on Trent Alexander-Arnold? Because suddenly it's Real Madrid have made a bid. It's moved on a stage in terms of the reporting. Do you think that was... We're speculating, but do you think that could have been part of what was going on?
Kels, no matter how good you are, how experienced you are, and he has won everything, he's done well, coming through the academy, no one could tell me that with all the speculation about Real Madrid and what's going on, and they've made the bid and they've not made a bid, for a hometown boy to go to Liverpool, who's playing at Liverpool, that's somewhere along the line that's not going to affect you some way. Because as much as we are just watching Trent on the pitch and he might be having a poor game, what's going on in Trent's head's going on all the time, every minute. Oh, are you going to stay, Trent? Listen, the pressure that's being put on him. Now, for me, I still believe that the execs, the owners, the execs, whatever's happened, Kels, with people that might have moved on from the contractual side of things and recruitment, they have taken their eye off the ball for Trent Alexander, Mo Salah, and Virgil van Dijk, the three main protagonists in Liverpool Football Club, to run down their contracts. I cannot understand why it's all shifting onto Virgil and Mo and Trent as to what they're doing, the pressure that they're under to try and perform in this time. We're seeing it from Virgil, we're seeing it from Mo, but they're not like from the ingrained Liverpool City, which Trent is obviously feeling and what he's going through at the moment.
Mo Salah's posted this picture as well, just in the last hour or so, where he very clearly knows exactly what he's doing.
That's a cheeky picture.
No comment, absolutely no explanation underneath. Just the three of them, which is, you know, very much in keeping with Mo's approach to this situation, which is actually, it has to be said, very different from how Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk are handling it.
Yeah, but the thing is, can I just say,
different approach.
Even Mo's celebration afterwards was a little bit more Mo.
He went twice, didn't he?
I liked it. I liked what's going on.
But
see, I'm obviously, you two, especially, I mean, I know you since you were, what, 15?
Yeah.
And when you've had, you know, West Ham and Portsmouth, was it, took you from West Ham? And so you've had that transfer sort of speculation around you forever, and you've still scored goals through that and whatever. And I kind of, this is heresy here, but I just kind of feel like with Trent, he will have known about Real Madrid, so I just thought he had an off day rather than it getting to him. But again, I can't really contend with you because you guys know.
There's a lot of things on it, because
know.
what Arne Slot said afterwards was that he sort of parked the transfer speculation, which has moved on in this week, certainly in terms of the reporting of it. There's a concrete bid in now from Real Madrid, which makes a difference. But also, he said, Dalot played brilliantly. Konate on the right-hand side of central defence wasn't fully fit, had just come back into the side, which means that he's not necessarily, Trent's having to work a little bit harder there as well. That there are other issues that were affecting his performance.
That's what I'm saying. Man United played well on a day, so it's just like it wasn't an easy game to play in. Yeah. The intensity of the game, it was a high-energy game. So obviously there's a lot of noise around Trent at the minute, and you have to put yourself in his shoes. And he's played a lot of games because Conor Bradley, who would replace him, was only fit enough to come on at the very end of the game. So he's been playing all the right backs. It's the only bad game he's had all season.
Yeah.
So to set those sort of standards that high, and then people like saying but you must be like, what's he thinking? At the end of it, he's in a position where Liverpool could go on and win the league. The Champions League, and then he's thinking, OK, then I've got a chance to go to Real Madrid. When Real Madrid come knocking, there's not many players that say no. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. But the fact that a lot of people are saying all this negative stuff about Trent, he's been unbelievable this season.
I think that was my concern. 17 goals conceded before kick-off yesterday is the best defence in the Premier League. He's actually had a good season. It's coincided with everything coming to a crescendo. But I'm not... Listen, I will never know. None of us will ever know. But I just think, I can't believe it would have got to him. I can't believe it. Only because when you look at what he's won everything there is to win. There has been noise around Trent forever, even in those periods where people didn't rate him, didn't think he was up to it. He's won everything.
So, but for me, Darren, so it's coincidence for him to have the worst ever game I've ever seen him have.
Yeah.
That was the worst game I've seen.
Yes, and you're right, but I think...
In and around that Real Madrid talk and everything.
Maybe his strength of character that it is only one game.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the experience that you're talking about.
But I think in general terms, it was the worst game Liverpool have had because, let's not kid ourselves and everybody watching.
Worse than Forest?
Well, only in so much as everybody expected them to beat Manchester United by a cricket score. Yeah. The form of the two teams, one defeat in 27 matches under Slot, Liverpool losing their last 4 in all competitions and conceding 11 goals. Everybody expected them to win. You ask people, they won't. Sometimes we're too professional to say it on air, but you ask people off air, whatever, is it 4-5-0?
Yeah.
6-0?
Yeah, everyone.
8-0.
I don't think Liverpool supporters was there because it's Liverpool, Man United. And I think you could look at previous seasons and there were this is, at some stage, this run of, big wins over Manchester United at Anfield is going to come to an end.
Agree.
And it just felt like that kind of was in the middle of the game was nearly called off, and then there was a lot of because there was a lot of snow in the area.
The chance at Maguire's chance at the end.
And there was a great chance, with Harry Maguire.
I suppose on paper, I'm just thinking on paper, you look at that back three who was so poor against Newcastle the other night. Again, I said, they scored a 2, could have had 5. Jacob Murphy on one side, Anthony Gordon on the other, and you're just thinking if Luis Diaz and Mo Salah pull Maguire and Martinez and De Ligt apart in the same way, it's just going to be brutal.
Messy,
but Liverpool as a team, maybe they believed in their own publicity. Maybe they looked at all of the headlines and Amorim saying, we're afraid of Liverpool and all of that kind of thing. And maybe collectively they played badly. They missed opportunities. They fell behind. I'm not really sure you can ascribe that to one player. I think that is a collectively bad performance for my money.
Yeah. And it's whether or not that's a one-off or whether or not they're going into a little dip, which they haven't had this season. And yet the other teams challenging for the league, most notably Arsenal, had theirs a little bit earlier on and looked very much as though they've recovered from that. But it was a 1-1 draw.
That's an interesting point. Liverpool's right were pushed. He thinks it's more the quality of Dalot and Fernandes. What was your opinion of Trent today?
Yeah, well, Fernandes got man of the match, or player of the match. So, yeah, they did play well. Manchester United had a lot of good players, a lot of good attacks, let's say. But there's no question about it. He's protecting his man a little bit there. Trent Alexander-Arnold didn't have a great game. Didn't follow the runner there. This was probably one of Manchester United's best chances in the first half. He possibly could have done better. Again, letting a runner go, which is, unforgivable, really. It got worse, I must admit. Anybody can get taken on and, I wouldn't say this was an awful bit of defending, but again, didn't cover himself in glory. But the goal, and again, I don't necessarily think that's the worst pass in the world. I thought Mo Salah was a little bit on his heels, but this now, Bruno Fernandes just walking past him and him just,
can you forgive that?
I don't even know what that is. That's just, that's just shocking, really. That was the bit that made me sit back in my chair and think, wow. And you can see here on the graphic, Manchester United certainly attacked that side more. Now, whether that was a ploy before the game or whether it developed during the game, we will never know, I guess. But that's exactly what happened.
It's always been labelled against him, hasn't it? We showed all pre-match how fantastic he is, the quality going forward. But in that kind of situation, that's always been labelled against him.
Yeah, when you look at the Liverpool team, I suppose when you analyse them, when you come up to play against, you think, where are Liverpool's weaknesses defensively? And I always think it's both fullbacks. Now, I think Andy Robertson has had a shaky few weeks, so I thought he was actually all right today. But Trent is capable of that. We've seen that a lot. We know how good he is. We know how influential he can be. His technique brilliant. His balls into players are normally very good. But defending like that in a Manchester United game at Anfield, it's really, you find it hard to believe. Really, it's almost blasé. Really, as if go on now, it's okay. You just go past me. And the goal comes from that. It's his reaction as well to his. Not so much his pass. As Michael said, it wasn't a great pass. I think Mo Salah can, as Michael said, do a lot more for him. But that's gone. Then he has to react and think, right, I'm going to stop this now. And his reaction to it was nothing short of pathetic.
And
really.
you wonder, don't you? I mean, he's got two of the best centre-halves alongside him, covering him all the time. A couple of years ago, it was Jordan Henderson.
There. Gravenberch should have been covering him more, which is a role Henderson did so often, didn't he?
And I just was mentioning a couple of years ago, he had Henderson literally filling in all the time. Then he's had, Fabinho was a great sitting midfielder. He's got Gravenberch that can cover the ground. He's got two centre-halves that cover him all the time. I mean, he is protected unbelievably for him to then go and show his stuff. But on the odd occasion, he's actually asked to do his defensive work. It's not up to scratch, but everybody knows that. Everybody knows that.
Can I say I wasn't right today, though? When you think of that channel, it was the perfect channel to target, really. You think Konate not playing games, as I said before, he's a player who needs to be playing every week to get that sharpness. And he looked slow, he looked sluggish, he looked like he'd not played for a good while. So,
6 weeks.
So that channel was perfect for Manchester United to attack. And Bruno Fernandes, he said he has the composure to take the ball in them areas and play people. And Dalot isn't actually a flying wing back either, do you know what I mean? So Trent's going to have tougher challenges than that playing against left wingers, but it was the right area to target, and I think United did it very well.
Really interesting, that Paul from the United. He said really mad 3 times, but basically he hasn't seen that attitude in any of his previous games in charge until today.
Well, I think that was plain to see, Steve. He's frustrated. He's equally pleased as he is frustrated with the performance, because even me sat here thinking, I've watched there, that was brilliant, really, really good. But I can't get excited about it because I don't know what's going to come next. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 or 6 games. You can't predict this team. I think, as I said before, I think personnel was better. I think it was better suited to the way he wants to play. And he's right. He can't coach effort. He's had 5 or 6 days with him. Yeah, brilliant. You can put him in positions. You can tell how are you going to score a goal, how are you going to keep possession, how are you going to build up from the back. But he can't give him the desire inside the stomach, the fire in the belly to go out there and actually perform like they did today. And that is always part of being a Manchester United player, because teams will always be desperate to beat. Manchester United 14th in Premier League, teams are still absolutely desperate to come and beat them. So if you don't match them for effort, or even give more effort than them, you're going to struggle. And today they did that.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your company as always. Michael and Paul, privileged to watch that game. Another real watchable Premier League game. And it ends a point apiece between the two giants, and the 3 of us. We'll see you soon.